Welcome to our workshop. Before we get into the content, we just want to introduce ourselves a little bit. So we're part of Design Collective, and we're just a club at McGill. We're the largest design community here, and we just want to provide students who are passionate about design with opportunities to explore and get inspired. And we're doing this through workshops and other career-related events. So for more details, you can find our social media platforms, and we have another workshop coming up shortly as well about UX design. But anyways, moving on, we're just going to introduce ourselves first. So, my name is Gillian, and I'm a second year here at McGill, and I'm majoring in neuroscience and minoring in psychology. I really liked painting and drawing when I was growing up. So in the past couple of years, I kind of transitioned more into graphic design.
And I'm Dorothy. I'm a third year linguistics and communications student here at McGill as well. And those interests kind of combined with my love of collaging and art grew into logo and graphic design. So here I
am. So yeah, I'm sorry my computer keeps making that noise. I'm not sure why it's doing that, but just anyways, to give you a brief rundown of the schedule today, what we're gonna do is first we're gonna go into some of the concepts that we think are important for designing event graphics, and then we'll split off into the actual tutorials themselves where we'll actually teach you how to apply these concepts. So just getting right into it, the first thing that we wanna talk about is formatting for your graphics. So a general rule of thumb that we like to use is that we like to balance out these types of graphics with certain elements of text, and then on the other hand, certain elements of image. And we also want to choose colors that will grab the eye. And then to put this all together, we just want to lay things out in a way that is not super busy, but it's still eye-catching and it gets the message across. So having said that, the four main topics that we'll go over before our tutorials are typography, image, colors, and layout.
So typography is basically the fonts that you use in your graphic. And there are three, it's a really important design aspect to keep in mind because it is important to pick a typeface that is cohesive with your graphic and also legible and eye-catching. So there are three main types of fonts: serif, sans serif, and script. Serif fonts, as you can see by the example, have decorative lines and tapers, and it shows a more distinguished, serious, classic look, and it can signify professionalism, which is why serif fonts are often used for papers like Times New Roman versus Arial, which just, I don't know, maybe use Arial for your papers, but Arial is a sans serif font, which on the other hand has the same width throughout all of the, the characters, with clean lines. And that's considered more modern, minimal, and friendly. So we use often sans serif in our design collective designs. And then of course, script fonts are obviously script-like and are a little more elegant and playful. But it's important to be careful when using a script font because sometimes they can be hard to read, which leads me to things to keep in mind when picking a typeface. If you want to go to the next slide, Gillian. Does it stand out? Is it eye-catching? If this is an event on Facebook or a flyer, will it grab your eyes? Is it comprehensive? Can you alter it? So as you'll see in at least the Figma tutorial, some fonts come with different weights. So if you can make it bold or lighter or normal, if you're using more than one font, do the fonts pair well together? And most importantly, is it legible? So you can see I have some examples of typefaces used in event graphics, like this one on the side. It has a sans serif that's very boxy, and it pairs well with the rounder image graphic that they use. And if you go to the next slide, here's a few more examples that kind of convey the style of the event and what the event type aesthetic will be like. So, and in addition to the text, the images that you use, can we go to the next in your graphic also contribute to the eye-catching aesthetic of your event. Um, so when designing my event graphics, I usually take one of three main approaches. Photographs, as you can see in the Zero to Unsplash event, where the image is used kind of as a background and complements the text on top. Obviously, it doesn't have to be a background image, but you can include photographs in your graphic. You can also use an illustration. So this 3D illustration workshop that we had a few weeks ago, that was part of the illustration that we did, and that was on the graphic to kind of get a taste of what the workshop would be like. And then of course you can use abstract elements for just a general eye-catching look, like these two on the right, where they don't really have much to do with the event itself, but they're just eye-catching and help the text pop.
All right, so the next thing that we want to talk about is color. So image and text are really important, but also the colors you choose also like play into how your graphic comes off as. So how do you choose a color? Usually when we design our graphics, we like to use kind of like a color palette. So something that I like to do is to start with your favorite color, and then you can build or the color that you want to be the most prominent in your graphic. And then from there, you can build off of that and, choose the next colors. So we have these two really great sites, coolers.co and UI Gradients, where you can kind of like lock one color in place, look at the other options for your palette, lock another color, look at the different options, and so on and so forth. And then another thing that you want to think about is color harmony. So how like appealing and visually appealing and stimulating the colors are for a viewer. You don't want to use like super dull, like gray colors too much, because it might not be eye-catching. And even in the colors that you do choose, like different colors can convey different moods, and like just the combination of the colors that you use can portray a certain aesthetic as well. And so you just want to keep that in mind for your event. And then another thing to consider when you're making color palettes is whether you're using analogous colors or complementary colors. So as you can see here, we have some color wheels, and analogous colors are just colors that are like side by side on the color wheel. And then if you guys noticed for this presentation itself, we used a lot of like this red tone and this like beige tone. So those would kind of be like analogous because they're closer together on the color wheel, versus like complementary colors would be colors that are like directly across or like pretty far from each other on the color wheel. Like you can see these combos, yellow and purple, green and red and whatnot. And both types of palettes are really great. You just want to be careful with analogous colors to make sure that there's still enough contrast within all your elements that your text is still legible. For example, like again, going back to our color scheme, the red is like a darker hue and the beige is like a lighter hue. So even though they're kind of on the same side of the color wheel, you can still make out different elements and texts. So again, here's an example. The one on the left is more like an analogous palette, like an analogous color-based palette. And then the one on the right, there's a lot of like complementary colors. So you can just see like how they kind of give off different vibes as well. The one on the right, the colors that they use are super bright and bold. So it's kind of like a fun kind of aesthetic. And then lastly, we just want to talk about layout, which is how you put all of the things that we talked about together into one graphic. So again, we kind of broke it down into like the three options that we usually like to use when we're designing our graphics. So we have, when you have the image or the graphic behind the text itself, as you can see in like the Studio Ghibli graphic, this is still pretty eye-catching. And again, with this option, you want to just make sure that your contrast is still good so the text is legible. We also have the graphic being next to the text, as you can see here. And then both elements are kind of distinct, so they're very easy to read or like look at. And then finally, we have the graphic kind of surrounding your text or like a part of your text itself. And again, these are just kind of rules of thumb. Like, of course, you can have layouts that don't follow this at all, but these are just like the main, more common ones that we find ourselves using when we're making event graphics. And then another thing to consider is the rule of thirds. So this is more of like a photography rule, but basically in photography, the rule of thirds is just saying that if you split your photo, or in this case graphic, up into even thirds vertically and horizontally, you can use those like lines and intersections to your advantage. So you either want to have things like in different sections or like along the intersections of different lines. So as you can see in like the graphic for this event, we have the image kind of in the right third of the graphic, and then everything else kind of in the left third and along the intersections of these lines. And then you can also see how this applies to the Studio Ghibli graphic. So yeah, now that we've kind of gone over a lot of the concepts that we feel like are important for designing the graphics, we're actually gonna put these concepts to use and we're gonna go into our tutorials. So I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen. So we have two breakout rooms, one for Adobe Illustrator and one for Figma. And I believe you'll be able to join them if you hit the like breakout rooms icon. And then when you look at the rooms where it says the number, if you hover over it, it should allow you to join. So right now, I guess, is it working for you guys? Like, can you see the breakout room option? Oh, okay, people are joining, so I'm gonna assume that's a yes. But yeah, we'll just let everybody join the breakout rooms and then we'll go into them ourselves as well. Yeah.
Okay. Looks like most people are in Figma.
That's a lot of people are in Figma.
Okay, I'm just gonna go to the Figma room now.
We have a question in the chat.
No, it depends which one you want to have practice in, I would say.
Like both of them are created as if like someone has not like ever had any experience with it. Oh, how do you join? So I think if you click on the breakout rooms, for the people asking in the chat, if you hover over the like number beside the breakout room, it should like say join, and then when you click that, it should let you go into the room. Is it working now?
It's just showing me like a blank screen for some reason, but maybe I'll leave and come back.
Which
Okay.
one do you want to join? I can try adding you to it.
The Adobe one.
Okay, let me try.
Thanks. It worked, thanks.
Okay, perfect.
Is there anyone else who wants help?
Suzanne and Min, are you guys? Oh, Min. So I think at the bottom where it says breakout rooms, if you click on that button and then you go to the like room and you hover over the number beside it, it should pop like a little join button should pop up, and then you should be able to go there. Also, Carrie, I'm gonna join my breakout room if you don't mind, just like, taking care of the people who are left in the main session. Okay.
Lucy, Suzanne, and Thaziri, if you want to maybe type in the chat which ones you want to join.
As you can see over here, there's all these different options to choose from. You could also, if you're making anything of any shape, you can just click and drag. But we're going to do a social media frame. We're going to do the Facebook post. So, okay, that's huge. And I already have these slides laid out, so I'm actually going to delete that. But that's the same size if you scale this down as the one that we're using. So to start, we're going to start with the text. So to make a text box, you can use the keyboard shortcut, or up here, this is the text box. You just press it and then click, and that will give you a text box. And for all Design Collective stuff, we use two main fonts, which are Work Sans and Roboto Mono. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And the nice thing about Work Sans, as you can see over here, it has all these different weights, so you can play around with that if you wanted to have the same font but different weights. But for this, we're actually going to just use the same one for all. But I'm going to write the text, which is caps lock. Yeah.
How did you add the Facebook post canvas?
Yes. You're going to click F for frame. That gives you the canvas and your shortcut. And then you see all of these on the right where it says like phone, tablet, social media.
Ah, yeah.
It's the Facebook post.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, we're going to go back to our text and do, I'm really not sure why this is all caps, but I'm going to go with it right now. Designing. And then I did the event graphics as a second one. And now what I want is them to be the same width. And you can see if I just like drag this. Oh, also the keyboard shortcut to zoom in is just Command plus and minus. If I drag this bigger, it doesn't actually make the text bigger. So I'm just gonna make this a little bigger. And same with this, 36, I believe I had it. And then once you have your two text boxes lined up, one tool that Figma has is, if you can see up here, these align tools. So if you select both of them, then you can align them and horizontally, this button right here, align horizontal centers, and that will let you, that aligns them so that you can have both of them even on the sides. And then the weight we had for ours was medium, so you can change them both to medium. Also, as you can imagine, if you wanted to do one like bold and regular, then that you could alter it from that. But in the meantime, I'm going to go back to here. So next we have this line across the top. So the line shortcut is just L on your keyboard, or you can go up here and click line. And you're going to drag a line across. And again, this toolbox on the right is really helpful for making little adjustments. So you can alter the rotation. So that's obviously going to be flat. And you can also select it all and align the centers so that just so that they're matched up. And then we'll add the date, which is March 16th. And this I changed the font to Roboto Mono. And I guess I can make it a little bit smaller. Move this up. And also these tools that you have over here, you can adjust the spacing between the letters like that. So if you wanted, we had ours more spaced out on our graphic, but you can adjust that as you would like. Just for time's sake, I'm going to skip doing some of the text because I think you all get the point. But we're going to go to the Assets tab now and copy the Design Collective logo. and paste it into our graphic here because we have that down here. And then the text box that we have around it, or not the text box, the rectangle that we have around it looks basically what it is when it's selected because it's plays into the whole computer screen vibe. So once you have that in, you're going to create a rectangle, which again, you can use this tool up here, or you can just press the R key. And oops, then you can click and drag a rectangle across your logo. And this will give you a this gray colored fill, but we actually don't want there to be a fill in this rectangle. We want there to be an outline. So if you click on stroke, the plus button, it'll create the outline there. And you can adjust that for the weight of the stroke, but we're just going to keep it at 1 right now. And then the fill, since we just want it to be empty and so you can see the logo, we're going to press the minus right here and that'll make it empty. So what we can do here, like we did before, is select both of these, the rectangle and the logo, and align them in the center or horizontally and vertically, so it's right in the middle. And again, let me know if I'm moving too fast or too slow, or if you need anything explained again. And then to create the outside squares like that, we're going to use the rectangle tool again. But if you hold down the shift key while you're dragging it, it'll make the make it a square, like all the sides equal. I'm going to make a small square, and again, I'm going to create the stroke and no fill. And then I'll drag that over here, and I'm just going to copy and paste it a couple times so that I can put it on each corner. And you can see the corners through it, but we'll get to that on the next slide. So is everyone on the same page right now? Is this good? Sorry. I don't know how to go back to see you guys.
Actually, how did you get the Design Collective logo in?
That is from the event graphic assets.
Okay, because all right, that opens in a tab, I think, and on the desktop. Okay, I'll figure it out. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not that important to our design moving forward. You could obviously put anything.
Also, you said if you hold down Shift, the rectangle becomes a square. Are you on a Mac or what are you using?
Yes, I'm on a Mac. I'm not actually sure what the shortcut would be if you're not, but I think.
Okay, no, because I am too, but it didn't quite work for me.
Okay, make sure that you're letting go of your mouse before you let go of the shift. Otherwise, it'll go back to a rectangle.
Okay.
Okay, so I have this next slide set up. This is basically what it should look like. So next, if you go back to the assets, where I have this color palette side, and like Gillyan mentioned, the color palettes we used are more analogous colors, which we already had picked out. But if you want to copy and paste that in, that way you can access this throughout the building the graphic. So the way to create the background color, you're just going to click on the frame, and that'll pop up your selection over here. And you can see the fill is currently white. And there's 2 ways to add color. You can either click on that and drag any color you want, pick from here, paste in a hex code. Or if you're out here and you have it selected, you can use the eyedropper tool, which is also here, actually, right here if you wanted. But it's the keyboard shortcut, just the letter I. And then you can select the color from your palette like that, and it'll change everything. Then we're going to highlight all the text and do the same thing, use the eyedropper tool and make it this beige color. Sometimes this is so funky to do. And since the logo and these little rectangles are, they actually isn't, it's not the fill, it's the stroke. You're going to want to select them all and also choose the, where it's black, you can change it to the beige right there. So once you have your colors set up, is everyone good with that? I'm gonna take that as a yes. We're gonna start building the computer screen, but for this we're gonna use plugins, which is a tool that Figma has that you can add all kinds of these plugins to do different, add different types of things to your design. So the way you're gonna do that is you're gonna right click or 2-finger click to bring up this menu and click on the, scroll down to the plugins tab and go click browse plugins in community, and that should bring up this. And like as you can see, there's so many that you can play around with for whatever you are interested in doing, but there's 2 that we're going to use for this graphic. The first one is Iconify, which should look like this, and you're just going to click install and it should install it in just a second. And the second one is Isometric, spelled E-A-S, like that, and you're going to install that one as well. So I'll just give you a second to get that all done, and then you're going to go back to your file and we'll start building the computer. So as you can see on the color palette, these 3 big ones are the main colors that we use, and these grays are what we use for the computer. So we'll start with a rectangle, and you can just click and drag. You can adjust this as you go. I'm not going to be super nitpicky just for the sake of time, but obviously you can adjust as you would want for your own graphic. So I'm going to fill this to this computer screen color, and we're going to use the isometric plugin to manipulate it into this isometric shape. So if you hover on plugins and go over to isometric, this one we're going to click on left, and it's going to do exactly that, and that gives you this 3D computer screen look. And we're going to do another rectangle for the bottom. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect because you can adjust all of the sizing at any point. And for this one, you're going to want to do top left, and you can play around with this each depending on what orientation your shape is in, and depending on what way you rotate it, it'll do different things. And you can also, if you open it like this, you can see like which way to do, but you can see which way it goes and click it from there. Anyway, so I'm going to drag this in a little bit. So there's our main computer, and then we're going to do another rectangle. You can do like a long skinny one like that, and for the top, this one will be top left again to get that top computer screen with that 3D, and then we'll do one like this. And then do one more for the bottom. And this one is going to be left again. And then the last one will be right, I believe. Did this all in advance, wrote it out, but sometimes, yeah, there we go. So there, all of a sudden, you have a little boxy computer screen. And if you want to select it all and then Command or Control G, that will group it so that you have that together and you can move it as a unit. And then you would also do the exact same thing for the mouse, which would just be like a little square. And I believe that would be left. Nope, top left. And that's your little square next to it. And again, I'm not being nitpicky with all of the exact sizing because that's something that you would play around with as you go. But I did like make it all smaller and adjust it to what looked most correct. So next we are going to build the mouse, which you can see here. I have on this next slide is this little circular mouse, but we're actually not going to use the isometric to make it like that. We're going to manipulate a circle. So if you use the O letter is the shortcut, or you can go up here to the ellipse, and you're going to create an ellipse like that. And once you have your shape selected, if you double click on it, you can see it brings up these circular tools, and this is how you can, like, you can see, you can do it like that, you can stretch it however you want, and you can do this on any shape in Figma. It's not, we'll use it again in a little bit, but this is how I made it look kind of the isometric mouse, because when you use the plugin on an ellipse, it kind of warps the shape. So I just kind of dragged the circles around so that, well, first I rotated this, and then I just dragged them so that they were kind of gave this mouse shape. Again, I'm not going to be super perfect about it because for time's sake, but you get the picture. And then also, if you go back to your color palette, I should check this down here. This is the lighter mouse color. So I'm just going to fill that. And then the way that I made it 3D is actually by using the shadow effect. So you're going to have the tool, the ellipse selected, and we're going to go over here and click on effects, and it'll automatically give you this drop shadow. And as you can see, it's just looks like a shadow, but we're going to alter it so that it kind of gives us the 3D look that we are going for. So if you click on this sun icon, it gives you all of these options, and we're going to keep X at 0, and I changed Y to 7. And again, this is all just like playing around with it. When you're doing this, it's a lot of trial and error, so you can play around with it as you see fit. And the blur, which is at 4 right now, I'm going to make 0. So that makes it the shadow not blurry at all, and it gives that that effect. And then the opacity, I'm going to change to 100%, and I'm going to change the color to the other color, the other gray on the palette. So you can see it's starting to look like that, but there's still this gap over here. And this is when I start to just get a little creative, and I make a rectangle tool, or I select the rectangle tool and I make a rectangle, and I fill it with the same color. And then I'm going to send it backwards, which is also the command square bracket. So that fills in that gap. And then I'm just going to copy and paste it and do the same over here. You might need to adjust your shape so that it's right on the pixel line so that there's no nothing sticking out. But that gave us that the mouse shape. And then again, you can do another ellipse for the little track or scroller. And there is the mouse. Oh, actually, yeah. So now, how is everyone good with that? On the same page? Okay. So moving on, these rectangles I'm not going to go over because it's the same thing as making the rest of the screen, but that was just adding details and layering it onto the computer. So what we're going to do now is the shading that you can see here, how I did it there. But we're going to do the rectangle tool and just drag it all the way from the corner of the frame to the edge. And that's just going to give us this big rectangle. And what we're going to do is click on fill. And you can see up here, this is a solid color right now, obviously. And if we click linear, it's going to give us this gradient that you can adjust however you want. But I'm going to put it right in the center and drag this over horizontally. So now we have this gradient going this way. And you're going to select for this leftmost color, that dark red that's on the color palette. And then on the other end, we're going to select the background orange that we had before. And that gives us this whole gradient, but actually for the orange, the lighter orange, I'm going to drag the opacity way down so it doesn't, so the dark red doesn't go so far across the frame. So once I have that, this is obviously over top all of the graphic, so I'm just going to send it to the back, and that way it's just the background color. And if you see over here on the left, this lock button, if you click that, it just locks it onto the frame so that you can't like move it around, which is helpful for a background thing. Oops, because sometimes if you go to select this and move it, it'll just move the rectangle, and that's just, it's really annoying. Excuse me. So if you lock it, then you can keep it in one place. And also the this eye, if you click that, it would just make it disappear. So if you want to see what your design looked like without it, you can click that. I'm going to put it back. And actually, this was supposed to be. So next, we're going to add these icons from our Iconify plugin. So if you go to your plugins and you click Iconify, it'll bring up this page, and it has like probably thousands of icons. You can search for many different icons. They have emojis, all of these different icon sets, but we're going to use two in particular. The first one is this cursor, which I already had set up, but if you just type in cursor, it'll bring up these icons, and you can, like, there's so many to choose from. They're basically all the same, but I use this one with the fill. And if you click import icon and then X out of here, it'll give you your icon right here. And as you can see, when it's imports here, it gives you a frame, which is the by cursor fill, and then it gives you a group, and the group is the actual vector shape, which is the cursor. And this makes it harder to manipulate when there's the frame around it. So what you're going to want to do is select group and drag it like out of the frame. I don't know if you can see what I just did. And then click on select frame and just delete the frame. And then all you have left is this vector, which makes it easier to edit color, shape, size, whatever. So once you have that, we're going to flip it horizontally, which is in here, but it's also Shift H, and that makes it go in the right direction. And you can obviously make it bigger, smaller, fill it, the document color, and that gives us the cursor. And then next we want this star that we have, and you can see part of the event like design image. It has it in two places. One kind of ties into this the flat text, and one has the isometric angle. So I'm going to show you how to do both. We're going to go back to Iconify. Here we go. And I'm just going to search in star. And there is a lot of stars here, but I'm going to choose this one. It's the 8-pointed star. It should come up. Maybe it might be on your second page, but you should be able to find it. And I'm going to import it again. And again, I'm going to drag the vector out of the frame. This one is more important to do because we're actually going to manipulate this shape, and delete the frame. And then I'm going to double click on this again, like I did with the ellipse for the mouse. So now I can adjust these points however I want. So I'm going to drag in the ones that are going out in a little bit because I want more of a sparkle shape. I don't know. And again, I'm not being perfect with it, but you can be as precise as you would want. I'm going to drag these out a little so it kind of elongates the shape. And then, of course, fill it with this color. So there we go. There's our star. And I can put it up here how I want it. Or I can go back and use the isometric. And we're going to go like that. And then it puts it on the same plane as the computer screen. And so there we have our second star like that. Oh, and also, I don't know if I remember as I was doing this, these squares like changed because the background color, they were empty and then the background color changed. But if you fill them with the eyedropper tool to the color that's just like really close to around it, then it will cover the corner, but also match the color around the outside. But, anyway. So next what we're going to do is go back to the event graphic assets and use these images, which it's really easy to copy and paste images into Figma. It's literally just copy paste. But if you go over here and select these, we're going to copy them and paste them into our design. And I'm going to shrink them down a little bit. And we're going to use the same plugin to make these on the same plane as the computer. So I'm going to do this to both of them. And then what we want to do is, as you can see, I had a shadow on here. So we're going to use the effects drop shadow again, but we're going to actually use the shadow effect, not just make it an opaque shape. So we're going to click on the settings again. And I had this going up, I believe it's 7. And the y-axis was -3 because if you had it just +3, it goes down. So you can just play around with that however you want it. I kept the blur at 4 and the opacity at the 25%. And then I'm just going to do the exact same shadow on the other one. So they are cohesive. And then
I do is round the edges. So if you can see on the right, this corner radius tool, you can click and drag and round it as little or as much as you want. So I had them set to 3 because I just like a nice slight round, but you can use that tool on like the regular rectangle shape and make it more circular. You can, I used it on the mouse pad here, or the mouse pad. So I like using rounded lines a lot on my shapes because it kind of takes the edge off. And then we're going to shrink these down to fit behind here. And as you can see, they're in front of the screen, so you can use the same layering tool to send them back behind the computer screen. And just move this around however you want. And I believe that's it for the design. So that's how we came up with this design. And those are the basic tools that you would use in Figma. Like even the plugins, there are plenty more to choose from. But you can explore those as you want. I learned Figma last year, and so much of it was just trial and error. I actually used it for a project, and just trying to figure things out gave me the most information about how to use the software. But there are also a ton of tutorials on YouTube, and I think even Figma has some like on their website, but I'm not 100% sure. So yeah, I'm going to actually, I'll ask if there's any questions first, or if you want me to go over anything again while I'm still on Figma, if you want me to walk you through anything. But does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, can you show again how you did the gradient?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to this one. So I'm going to use the rectangle tool again and create a rectangle over the entire frame. And then I'm going to go to fill, and you see here how it says solid. I'm going to choose linear, and also like you can choose any of these. They would give you a different kind of gradient, but for this graphic I used linear. And you can then drag these little icons around so that it makes a perfectly like horizontal gradient. And then for the left color, I chose the dark red that we had on the color palette. And on the right color, I chose the regular background orange. And I pulled the opacity of the orange down a little bit. And then, is that good so far?
Yes.
And then I just took this layer and sent it all the way to the back so that everything was on top of it. Is that good?
Yes, thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions? Okay. Well, I'm gonna stop sharing, I guess. And yeah, so that was the Figma tutorial. Like I said, the best way to learn the software, I would say, is just trial and error, because just playing around with it and seeing, oh, you can do this with this tool, it has really just taught me the most. But yeah, super useful tool. That's that.
I have a question. Do you have any maybe general tips for designing for accessibility? Like I know you said to consider the font size and contrast, but do you have any other rules of thumb or anything?
I don't actually. It's like an important thing that I should learn more about, but I would say like, yeah, just legibility. I know that there are certain fonts that are easier to read for like people with dyslexia and stuff, and I know that if you like Google it, they'll come up. But in terms of just legibility, like just keeping high contrast and like clear blocked fonts, like I said, script can often be more difficult to read.
Cool, thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. How did you make the logo, make it sideways? Can you show it again?
Yeah, here, let me share my screen again. You mean like make this sideways?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to copy this in again. I just pasted that in and then used the same plugin that we used for the whole computer, the isometric. And then I just clicked to left and that made it, turned it sideways. And then I
Thank you.
Any other Figma related questions while I have it open?
Could you just do the drop shadow behind the logos one more time?
So if you click on effects, it'll give you the drop shadow option, and also like there are other options here if you want to do that, but we're using the drop shadow. And you click on the little sun icon, and from there I did the X value as 7 and the Y as -3, but again, you can totally change that based on what you want it to look like. And also like the spread, yeah, you can play around with all of these, how blurry you want it. So yeah, that would go that way, this would go that way. And then I just rounded the corners, which is not the drop shadow, but over here, that'll adjust the corners as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd never thought of moving the drop shadow in the x-axis, so that was cool. Thanks.
Fun playing around with the shadows. Okay, any other questions, comments? If not, thank you all so much for sticking through that.